Thank you, everyone. Great talk, Kat. That was awesome. I love this conference. I'm so excited to be here. I'm having a great time. I'm seeing old friends, making new friends. Seattle showed up. Like, this is a gorgeous time to be visiting Seattle. I'm from San Diego. My name is Reyes. I'm the head of developer community for SignalFire. SignalFire is a venture capital firm out of San Francisco, and one of the few who has anyone who has done DevRel. I'm a software engineer. I'm a soccer coach and father of two. And today I want to talk you through 10 years of engineering data inside of big tech. This is built on the data that SignalFire uses to invest, but I use it to gather insights and trends into engineering careers. For this talk, I want you to think about your career. I'm hoping that during this talk, you're thinking about where you're at, where you're headed, and to get a peek inside some of the companies that are doing this at scale really well. Even all the shortcomings of these companies, I think there's something to learn about their engineering cultures. And if you're an organization, think about implementing some of those changes. So the methodology behind this is based on SignalFire data, which is more than 80 sources that are compiled and then enriched, analyzed, and classified using machine learning. SignalFire was started by an engineer who built Google Ads, and his premise was the only way to raise money right now is who you know. There's got to be a better way of funding these companies. So he built this massive machine learning brain that alerted our investors into companies that were undervalued, into founders that were undervalued, and teams that should be funded but weren't getting funded. And it's been working really well for us. This has info on billions of profiles, including companies and people. All of you are in this database, I promise. And this is unlike any other developer survey out there, Stack Overflow, Evans Data. This is built on empirical data. This is not surveys. This is not a sample size. This is every engineer in the US and where they're working and what's happening. The list of big tech companies, you can see the criteria here, but we did keep it to companies of a certain size, except for AI labs. Because they're so small and because they're such a big deal right now, we wanted to see what was happening inside of them as well. So the first thing is, let's talk about AI. No one's talked about that yet. So, or as I like to call it, the real engineers of Salt Lake City. I've been traveling a lot, so I've been watching a lot of Bravo. It might have snuck in here. The number of AI engineers is booming. There was 1 out of 20 engineers in 2014. Sorry, 1 out of 100. Now it's 1 out of 10 engineers that are AI engineers. The percentage is growing, so, 1 out of 20. So there's now 1 out of 20 engineers that have rebranded or are actually AI engineers. Something to think about. The growth rate has been explosive, but slowing down. We're still in the double-digit growth rate, but when it started in 2014, the number of AI engineers was literally doubling every year and has slowed down a little bit. But this is happening across every industry. There was 20,000 companies in 2014. There's now 200,000 companies who have AI engineers inside of them. As a VC, we see this happening everywhere. We see construction, legal, every industry under the planet right now is using AI on top of their proprietary data to break in and disrupt their industry. Cumulatively, this has just been a massive growth. If you are tinkering with AI, if you're listening to these talks and learning today, build something in AI, call yourself an AI engineer, I promise. It's a good idea. But that's not the only thing I looked at. This survey started because a CTO of a public company came to me and said, what are the big companies doing well? How are they retaining engineers so well? And I wanted to see if that was really the case. So I looked at engineering retention over the last 10 years across the US, and it is going down. It is steadily going down, and this represents millions and millions and millions of developers, so any 1% decrease is actually significant less time engineers are staying at any one place. You could argue that's a good thing, it's a bad thing, it's happening. It's also happening at the same time as engineering teams are growing. I do not think this is an accident. I think that as managers have to manage more and more engineers, it's harder for an engineer to get the coaching they need, to get the skills they need in order to develop. And I think that's why people are moving so much. They're looking for the next opportunity to build on the edge. So that's another thing to think about if you're an organization. The other thing we looked at is unemployment engineering, and this was actually not part of my original report. Some of these slides, you're all the first to see any of this data, but this came from the pragmatic engineer reached out and said, hey, you've got all this amazing data, I would love to do a job report. How many engineers in metros right now are hired? So we looked at all of the metros in the US, and across the U.S., the engineering unemployment rate is higher than the U.S.'s unemployment rate. But not every city is equal. There's some cities which are doing really well. And if you're looking for a job, good thing you're here, because Seattle is the biggest city. It's got the second most engineers in the US, and it's got the lowest unemployment rate of all the big cities. You can see there's other places here like Des Moines, Milwaukee, Indianapolis. Shout out if you're from any of those places. But these are the places you want to be if you're looking for a job right now. The places you don't want to be are Miami, Los Angeles, Phoenix, Sacramento. These places are not, there's just tons and tons of engineers who are not in a job right now. I think that this suggests maybe the move to the office is real. It doesn't feel real where I'm from or where you're from, but it might be actually happening because this started with pragmatic engineers saying, I'm hearing a lot of people in Tampa and Omaha saying, hey, I can't find a job. No one's hiring remote anymore. And I hope that changes because that's not a great thing. But one of the splits that's most alarming to me is that college grads are not getting hired right now. A lot of these rates are higher in 2025 than they've been in 15 years because new early career grads are not getting hired by these big tech companies. Boston jumps to the top of the list when you break it out this way because they have a ton of CS grads that are just not getting hired. So that's what's happening across the US. I want to take a look at what's happening inside of these big orgs. And the first question I asked is FAANG real? Like, is FAANG something that actually determines the quality of an engineering org? Is this where the best engineers are going? And I pulled a ton of data across all 120 different tech companies, and there was 2 areas in which FAANG stood out. And that was, this is the below deck big tech edition. Can't miss that joke. There's engineering retention and engineering talent. So one of the things Beacon does that no one else does is we're able to give every engineer a talent rank, and we're able to use this to inform this graph. And there is a strong correlation here between FAANG and having high engineering retention, so above 4 years engineers are staying, and a high talent rank, meaning the best engineers are going there. But there's 3 logos that were added to this list this year. Adobe, woot to Adobe, Seattle-based, Uber, and Stripe. Those 3 companies are now operating at scale and retaining and bringing in the best engineers. Again, we dropped OpenAI and Anthropic from this list because they're too small to compare. If you're thinking about Anthropic and Google, you're thinking about an engineering size that is 100 times larger at Google. So it's hard to compare apples to apples. They have a lot to learn for sure. But success can be defined many different ways, and one of the ways is, are these companies hiring engineers who do not have traditional CS degrees? I do not have a CS degree. I was a music major who decided to start coding, and I'm a little biased here, but I think there's a lot of talent in people who didn't go to CS school. And so the CTOs were asking me, hey, are people hiring like this? Are there bootcamp grads entering these companies? And the answer is yes. In fact, across all tech, it's about 1 in 10 engineers are coming from a non-traditional background. But you can also see that there are some companies that are way ahead of the curve, including Walmart, Microsoft, Adobe, Disney, Netflix, Apple. 4 of these are regularly recognized for their patents and their creativity. They're winning awards, they're building incredible products, and I don't think it's an accident that they are taking a diverse approach to hiring. And almost every one of these companies is growing. So Anthropic, OpenAI, they're like doubling right now. That means for every engineer that leaves, they're hiring 2 more. And most companies are still growing. There's this myth that AI is causing a decline in the hiring of engineers. We do not see that in the data. Instead, what we see is companies are doubling down on making sure they're bringing in people who can build faster, because a lot of the stuff they're building requires net new talent. So at the bottom of this list, you'll find some companies that are not growing. They're actually losing engineers faster than they're hiring. And I think there might be a reason, but it could also be that they're underinvested in AI. I will say Microsoft, Amazon, Apple, being at the bottom of this list, are also towards the bottom of engineering retention. So engineering retention, this is any engineer who stays past 4 years. The average is 3.2 years for every US engineer. But these companies are able to keep their engineers longer. And if I was a company thinking about how to retain engineers longer, I would look at this stat, which I think is the most surprising chart that I got out of the report, which is there is a strong correlation between your ability to retain engineers and get the best engineers and your open source contribution. So if you're thinking about bringing in great engineers, if you want to become the next FAANG, the Magnificent Seven, open source contribution looks like it's the path. My name is Jared. I'm having a blast. Please come meet me afterwards. I will say, if you want some of this data for a report, if you want to build your own content, if you're making YouTubes out there and you want some awesome data, just reach out. The Pragmatic Engineers post went out 2 weeks ago. It was huge. And I would love to partner with anyone who wants to use this data in compelling ways. And thank you for the time.